We're going to go over the Chinese dynasties from beginning to end. Shang Dynasty on forward. If you want to write the slides down, outstanding. If you want to type the slides down, outstanding. If you just want to sit and listen and try and remember, that is also outstanding. Now this year, we've covered a lot of content. 52,000 years of human history is a lot of stuff. Hopefully, this will kind of jog your memory. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, I remember that. What would be catastrophic is if you said, oh my gosh, I never heard of that. That would be a problem. We have done all of this stuff, I promise you. Later we will go back and connect it all. But China can be linked several ways throughout world history. So we're going to start way back here in the Shang Dynasty. We have the four river valley civilizations: Mesopotamia, Egypt, India, and China. China is the farthest away. So ideas, while all four river valleys kind of start simultaneously, China gets started a little bit later due to its extensive distance from East Africa. And the mythological founder of the Shang Dynasty is none other than who? You. See, we can be participatory here. Is you, all right, who dug those ditches for 13 years, and the Chinese gods blessed him. They gave him the mandate of heaven. He was a just and a good ruler. And the Shang Dynasty is going to last for roughly 600 years to 1027. They are the formative of the 31 Chinese dynasties. They will settle in the Yellow River, the heartland of China, because it's where they could grow food. The Yellow River is also known as the River of Sorrows because the texture of the soil and the landscape there, it didn't make, for lack of a better word, didn't make good mud. So they couldn't make dams and dikes to prevent the river from flooding. So every year when the monsoons would come, the dams would break, and they also called it the River of Sorrows. People are attracted to water. Water is life. So you build your village right next to the river. Problem is, that's very dangerous because the river can flood. All right. However, just come on in, guys. When they do get things settled, the Chinese agricultural surplus, and at this time they grow wheat. And I'm going to say this in every civilization we talk to, up to 1750 AD or CE, the primary economy of the world is going to be agriculture. We are going to grow stuff, namely so we can eat it. All right, we like to eat. Look at me. I like to eat. Well, when they begin their agricultural surplus, they begin an inter-regional based trade system. They only traded within China. They didn't know anybody else was out there. In the Shang Dynasty, and if I'm going too fast or too slow, feel free. Do you guys want to copy this down on enemy talk, or is this okay? All right. In the Shang Dynasty, they called themselves the center of the universe. They really didn't know that anybody else was there. And the emperor begins to build a strong military. This helps him police his area and to keep power. So at this time, China is what Japan will be after Tokugawa Ieyasu. Very ethnocentric. They were only concerned about China. They really didn't know or care about anybody else. Much like everyone else, they worship the different polytheistic gods of nature. The god of the wind, the god of the rain, the god of the sun, the god of the moon, so on and so forth. And much like Alex rant on calendar systems, It was the gods that dictated the change of season and weather patterns and whether crops grew or not. But in addition to what we see in China, different from the other river valleys, is the extension of ancestor worship. And here's where I wanted to play my Mulan, because Mulan's boyfriend, eventually husband, will be, what's his name? Shang. It's Shang, all right? But if you've seen the Disney classic Mulan, she's running around, the dog is chasing the chickens, and Mulan is in the temple praying to her ancestors. It was the extension of ancestor worship where you could pray to your dead ancestors who were closer to the ear of the Lord of heaven to get you non-greedy help. Please help our crops to grow. Please help our family be healthy. Please protect our village. Things of that nature. You couldn't be greedy. The comparison I make is how Roman Catholics use saints. You have an intercessor, someone close, that can pray for you 24 hours a day while you cannot. Technology that will develop in the Shang Dynasty. The biggest invention is the wheel, but they only attach it to a wheelbarrow, not two wheels on an axle, but one wheel that makes rolling heavy loads easier. You guys probably see your gardeners use those in wind chime and Larkspur and Wexford and wherever else you guys live. But if you've ever used one, it's two wooden handles, a big metal bin, and you lift a heavy load and you wheel it. Next time your lawn is getting mowed, go out and pick one up and see what it's like. It'll be okay with these, I promise. Just wear gloves so you don't get splinters. We got to put some comedy in here, guys, or I'll go stupid. All right. So at this time where the Chinese learn how to make silk, will become a very expensive, highly sought after cloth, and will be one of the names of one of the greatest trade routes plural. It wasn't the Silk Road, it was more like roads. But we haven't got to that point yet. And they were good at working with bronze. And the focus at this time, early on in Chinese history, is the family. Everything is pretty much family-centered, where the male is a very patriarchal, dominated society. And this is how the early dynasty will go for roughly 600 years. But we all know what happens. Shang works really hard, or Yu does. His son and his grandson work really hard, and the great-grandson works kind of hard. By the time we get 5 or 6 generations down the line, what happens? Lazy. We don't work hard. Eventually, all the good things that the emperor did at the top, his descendants will become so spoiled and lazy. Once again, in oops-a-daisy, we're going to have a problem. Famine will ravage. Outsiders may invade, or there'll be bandits. The Mongols, the Xiongnu, are always on the horizon. The people will be starving, while the emperor is living a life of luxury up in his palace, playing the PlayStation 4, 361. Is that what they were called? Please, what 360? Is that what it's called? Xbox One. Yes, that's it. Xbox One, along with his iPad, his Kindle, his iPod, his Iran, and his Iraq. He won't care about the people. Right? He's not going to care what's going on, and they're starving. It is at this point when they become so lazy, the gods will remove the mandate of heaven. It is a cycle that will run 31 times throughout Chinese history. Some dynasties are longer than others, but there are 31 dynasties throughout China. And it is the warrior wing, the fighters, the warriors of the Shang Dynasty that are going to take over. And they'll reign for about 800 years, the Zhao or the Chao Dynasty. And they come up with a concept of this mandate of heaven. They take over from the Shang, and What they try and do is build upon the success that the early Shang Dynasty leaders conducted. What we need to do is what you did. Early on, when the emperor rolled up their sleeves, went out in the fields, and worked with the people. That's what we are all about. We want to maintain the good things they did and get rid of the bad stuff. And they will be the first to set up what we will know as a system of feudalism, where the land is so big, the king and the emperor can't be everywhere. I told you guys this is called proximity to authority, where the emperor will give out large tracts of his land in terms of payment, in terms of money. And a trusted aide will govern that territory for the king. The governor lives on it. The people who live on the governor's land help sustain him, and he keeps the peace and rules for the emperor. The king gives land and peasants to work the land for his workers. And as a result, in China, we have probably the largest gap between rich and poor in all of the ancient world, where the nobles lived, or the emperor lived in palaces and large houses, and the people lived in those mud circular huts in the ground covered by bamboo. And that pretty much, well, that sucked. All right, so people out there in AP World Review land, we can use that term in here. So, yeah, there we go. Now, after 800 years, the Shang, or the Zhao, excuse me, go bye-bye, and we get into this, chaotic period called the era of warring states. And the era of warring states is just mass chaos. When the emperor is no longer in authority, different governors become warlords. All right? Christina fights Iris. Iris fights Leslie. Leslie fights Jada. Jada turns on Abigail. And they're all fighting and competing for land and resources. Who's trapped in the middle? The peasants. Peasants are destroyed. The land is destroyed. And it's about a 300-year period where things are just nasty. Eventually, the Chinese government will begin to rebound. They will try to form a bureaucracy. And bureaucracy is when different governmental officials have a specific job. The emperor can't handle everything. So I need specific people to help me out. President Obama is in charge, but Secretary of State John Kerry handles our diplomacy. He is the head of the bureaucratic department of diplomacy. Make sense? Okay, good. All right. So the government needs to specialize and stabilize. Let's get people who are good at one thing. But gosh darn it, that chaos stinks. We hate chaos. Chaos isn't fun. And the guys called in to stabilize the situation, just like Julius Caesar in ancient Rome, or just like Charlemagne tries in the Middle Ages, or Minamoto Yoritomo, they are military guys. Am I going too fast? I see you guys writing furiously. Military guys like structure and order. Everything fits into a specific area. There is chain of command. Right? Sergeant, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, major, colonel, general. Goes up to the general and back down to the sergeant. Things are structured. So in comes the Qin Dynasty. We remember them because if you didn't like them, you took it on the chin. All right? They were military guys who ruled by harsh order. Now they were very short-lived. Their dynasty didn't last very long because they followed the idea of legalism. That people by nature are greedy. So you have to reward good behaviors and swiftly and severely punish bad ones. Like the kid in Singapore that was caned for vandalizing police cars. All right? Swift, brutal punishment. don't have time for you to be screwing around. And the emperor is a guy named Shi Huangdi. And Shi Huangdi wants to bring order and stability to all of China. So he has very harsh laws and strict discipline. It was his way or it was the highway. And even nobles were expected to perform. As a matter of fact, nobles had to perform at a higher level than the commoners. The commoner doesn't understand what's going on, but a noble should. A noble should know better. And Shi Huangdi will re-centralize the government. I'm not going to work with the bureaucracy. I am in charge. Everything will stem from me. He's an absolutist, like an Egyptian pharaoh. And military guys like things to be uniform. Uniformity means the same. It's if we were all at a private school, you guys would be wearing like khaki pants and like white polo shirts or something. Or maybe we'd have like blue ones or red ones we could wear on Friday. Everything is standardized, like an athletic uniform or a military uniform. But in this case, everything has to be made the same. The weights and measures for doing business in a market have got to be certified by the emperor. The width of the axles on your carts and wagons have got to be the same length. So we only have 2 ruts in a road to worry about instead of a bunch of them. Laws are written down, and for the first time, a currency system is used. And one of Shi Huangdi's biggest contributions is, he said there are different spoken dialects here in China, but we are all going to write the same. Chinese characters, we are all going to write the same way. So even if you couldn't speak to each other, you could read the writing system. The Chinese characters are streamlined and written down. The Qin Dynasty will take the separate sections of the Great Wall of China and link them all together on the northern border of China, mainly to keep out the Mongols. Those pesky Mongols like crabgrass are trying to get in. We want them to stay out. And Shi Huangdi, to make sure there were no other types of thought in his empire, had all old books of learning in Chinese history that didn't agree with him burned. Good old-fashioned book burning. So this is how we are going to play this game. And he said we shouldn't look to the past of China. We can't look at what the Zhao and what the Shang did, because those were different events. We need to deal with what's going on right now. But he was such a megalomaniac, he does constrict the terracotta warriors. He has them built, the thousands of lifelike soldiers that guard his tomb. But in the end, it is his strength and his violence that will undo Shi Huangdi. He caused a change in China too rapidly. Things happened too fast. The people were not accustomed to them. You need to let them go slow and to take their time and to take root. But he went too fast. It's the Darth Vader philosophy. With the power of this Death Star, I hold the power of the universe in my hand. And Princess Leia says, the harder you squeeze, the more will slip through your fingers. You can only beat on people too much and they begin to rebel. One of the works of literature that will survive the Shang Dynasty will be that of Confucius. And Confucius will validate the mandate of heaven in the dynastic cycle. And Confucius said China should function as a team. In the old school, we said individual records are achieved through the accomplishment of the team, which means you by yourself are nothing. You are only getting those accolades because you have a team around you. You could be the best individual player ever, but if you're on a losing team, who cares? All right, you're a scrub. Individual success is gauged by the accomplishments of the team. Everyone in Confucius's mind had a role to play. And if everyone does their job, China will experience harmony in society. And he breaks it down into 5 simple relationships. Ruler to subject, father to son, older brother to younger brother, husband to wife, and friend to friend. Only the last one is equal. In every other relationship, there is a superior and an inferior. Superior must help out the person below him, and the person below him is obligated to listen and learn. If everybody does that, China is going to be rock solid, and the accomplishments of the team are going to be great. Confucius's ideas don't catch on right away, but throughout its history, when China gets into trouble, they stop and they ask, what would Confucius do? And I go, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this brings us to the great Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty is very important. It is a bridge in China and in culture. And it comes out like this. The Han Dynasty will be the equivalent in the Western world of ancient Rome. Han Dynasty and the Pax Romana of Rome exist at the same time. We got roughly 220 BC to 220 AD. So the Han Dynasty bridges the before Christ and the year of our Lord, or the BCE and the CE eras. And it is in the Han Dynasty that the Silk Road, in 130 BC, the Silk Road branches out of China and makes it over to the Middle East and Mesopotamia. So it is the Han Dynasty that will help create the famous Silk Road trading route. It will go from 130 BC, and the Silk Road, we'll talk about it more later, will stop in 1453 when the Muslims captured Constantinople, and the Muslims kicked off the Silk Road. Here's a global world historical context event. To give you a little break. When the Muslims kinked the hose in Istanbul and they stopped the Silk Road in 1453, what is a reciprocal reaction of the Muslims closing off the Silk Road? The age of exploration. Europeans moved to Africa, into the New World, because the Silk Road was kinked off. Ooh ah, ooh ah, ooh ah. Yes. Everybody got that? Julie, you still ready? All right. All right. You still got field hockey, lacrosse, whatever it is? All right, so you're good. After this, you just go home and you guys are skipping today? Are you going to get in trouble? Okay. We're good. All right. So, the Han Dynasty gets sick and tired of those stinking Mongols. So they go up into Mongolia and they try and just exterminate and kill every last stinking little Mongol. And the Mongols say, ah, we're out of here. And they turn on the map to their left, which is west. And they start running. And what happens is the Mongols, all right? What happens when the Mongols run from the Han Chinese? They cause that massive snowplow of barbarian tribes that will topple Rome. Is that a world historical context event? Yes, Leslie. I'm glad you nodded your head because it is. So, the big warrior is Han Wuti. And he extends the borders of China into Korea and up into Mongolia. And the Han Dynasty will set the standard. To be a strong dynasty, you must expand the borders of China. You must make it bigger. The Han Dynasty sets the precedent. It is here that is told you that trade begins to expand west as the Silk Road makes it into Iran, and the old Persian, the Great Royal Road by King Darius connects to the Silk Road, and now we have goods moving from the west and from the east. We have cultural exchange in 130 BC. And the Han Dynasty, they look around and they go, God, you know who's really smart? That Confucius guy. About those 5 relationships and do the right thing, not the popular thing. Why don't we set up schools based on his standards of education? And that is how we will rank our governmental ministers. Not only did you need to get a good score on the test, but let's say Iris gets a 5 on the AP World History exam and she wants to get a job. Yes, not only does she need the 5, but what else does she need? A recommendation from somebody who's already in the governmental ministry. And so if Iris fails, what happens to me? She's fired and so am I because I recommended her. This was the way the Han felt that they would get good established governmental workers, good honest politicians working for the good of all China. As a result of the growing trade route, the Silk Road, which will bypass South Asia, also known as South Asia, also known as
Indian subcontinent.
There we go, Indian subcontinent. We will get the spread. That was a horrible triangle. I don't even know what geometric shape that was. It was a horrible India. All right. Buddhism will spread out from India and will transfer over towards China. We'll talk more about Buddhism tomorrow. And it's here that there is a big debate between Confucian scholars advising the Han emperors and those old stinking meanie legalists. And the Chinese government maintained monopolies on things that everybody needed, like copper, like salt, and alcohol. The only place you could get it was from the emperor. And the Confucian scholar says, no, 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 no. The emperor should not be in the business of selling things to the people. Because who do we historically not like in China? Who's the lowest scum-sucker on society? Merchants. Because what do stinking merchants do? Make money off of other people's labor. Gabby Kimmick makes it, she gives it to Mia. All Mia does is sell it at Mia Mart, all right? Also known as Walmart. What did Mia do? She opened a big giant rectangle and put a booth in it. Did you do any of that work for anything, Mia? No, so we don't like that. Chinese value honesty, devotion to duty, hard work in the family. Traits exhibited by Yu when he was digging those ditches for 13 years. And so the Confucians say when the emperor maintains a monopoly, he's no better than a dirty, stinking merchant. And them's fighting words in China. You call me a merchant. What did you call me? What? That's where I throw down right here. And the legalists said no. The government should enjoy the profit from these monopolies. He's the divine emperor, means he can do whatever he wants. The Confucian scholars claim victory. The Chinese government maintains monopolies virtually up until this day. Massive inventions created during the great Han Dynasty. This is several years ago during the AP exam. The compare and contrast was technological innovations between Rome and the Han Dynasty, and I wept with joy and pride because I think we set a world record of getting like 7s and 8s on that essay. Because while Rome is building like arches and concrete and roads and all that good stuff, the Chinese are also at a high level of innovation. Paper. So we no longer have to carve on stone or in a mud tablet. Even better than that are accurate sundials. so we can tell what time it is. What time is it? Summertime. Oh, I mean, that's coming up in about 30 days. And Alec can have his calendar fetish, that none of them are accurate, and they should go on the equinox, and they even know what the hell they're talking about.
China's is pretty good.
China is what I'm talking about. You know, year of the pig, baby, year of the pig. That's all I know. Zodiac, there we go. So, all right. The seismograph. It was that weeble wobble with the different size dragon heads with the clay marble in it. The more the marble shook, the heavier the earthquake was going to be. Did it give the people a lot of lead time to be safe? No, but it was something. Also, the stern post rudder on a ship. No longer do you have to steer by rowing with your oars. You have the rudder where it gives you more balance and control of a ship at sea. All comes out of the great Han Dynasty. Near the end, they figure out that, you know what? The people will only work if there is an incentive. Brundage, I'm not going to work for nothing. I'm not going to work just because I can. There's got to be something in it for me. Right? There's got to be some sort of profit or payoff. So they went laissez-faire, no controls. Just go and do whatever you want. And the economy in China booms and causes a massive population explosion. And during the Han Dynasty, there were some weak emperors, but at this time the Confucian scholars were so good, they were able to prop up these weak emperors. And it wouldn't be the Han Dynasty without telling my favorite story. We all know about Mr. Wang Mang, who things are going bad, and Wang Mang becomes the emperor, and he's going to try and fix everything. And everything that Wang Mang does just collapses. It makes things worse. There's a famine, so the dynastic cycles say, you know what? We've run through you, knucklehead. You're so bad, not only do we have to kick you off the throne, and we have to kill you, and we have to eat you. And here's how we do it in Chapel Hill, AP World Land. We sing, everybody have fun tonight. Everybody eat Wang Mang tonight. Kids across the country don't get stuff like that. Yes, sir.
What were the problems that he was trying to solve? What was he doing wrong?
Invaders were coming back. The old irrigation canals weren't cleaned out, so they didn't bring enough water to grow the food. It was proximity to authority. As everything possible that could go wrong, he was trying to fix. Abigail.
Was it Han specifically who set up Confucian schools, or was it just like the dynasty?
It was the dynasty. It started. He's like, you know what? I really like this Confucius guy, and with him, the Confucian schools get built. But he starts it all. All right. If you guys can't tell, I really like, well, the Han Dynasty. Also, my favorite Star Wars character next to Chewbacca. Han Solo and Chewbacca take care of this. They don't whine. They don't like, oh my God, who's my father? Right arm's chopped off. They just handle business. All right. So anyway, all right. Next up is this very short-lived Sui dynasty. And when we were talking about the age of absolutism, you may remember I talked about the next man up. Like when there's a great iconic personality, like a famous political leader or a famous coach or a famous, revolutionary. You know the icon, but nobody remember who comes after. Like who's the next man up? Like what? Like who came after Moses? Who came after Dean Smith? Like, we don't know. All right. Well, I mean, some of us do, but some of you guys don't. Who comes after Pope John Paul II? Was it the current pope? Or was there an in-betweener? All right. You got to have that in-betweener that kind of just get stuff done, and that's the poor Sui dynasty. They follow the great Han Dynasty, and they don't last for too long, but they try and go back to that strong centralized government, where one person is in control. Their big accomplishment is they build the Grand Canal linking the Yangtze and the Wangho rivers, the two major rivers in China. It's the largest canal dug by pure human labor about 120 miles north to south. Now products that could be grown in the south can be quickly and easily transported and sold to markets in the north. This is my Georgia peaches and Vermont maple syrup philosophy. You guys remember that? All right. And so this starts to create and open up an even larger, more viable Chinese economy. Yes, sir?
Do we need to know a lot about how the Han Dynasty kind of fell, or is it kind of like Rome, how it just kind of
slowly deteriorate? That would be a great comparison.
Okay.
If we would get fortunate enough to do that again.
Yeah.
All right, long, slow, but inevitable downturns. All right, the emperor lived a life of luxury, and he would actually go out on his barges feasting and throwing away food into the rivers, while his workers and people nearby were starving. After a while of seeing that, the emperor is going to meet with a small accident, and this is the final dynasty that will end in an era of just massive violence. There is a throwdown and chaos after the Sui dynasty. But because of the harshness of life in China, it allows Buddhism the ability to escape the nasty transmigration or samsara of life in one cycle. Buddhism and its adaptability really takes root during the Sui dynasty. Yes, sir?
Did the actual government try to convert people, or does it just spread?
It just spreads. It spreads because of their harsh rule. So the Sui dynasty, there's probably not going to be a question because nobody really cares. Who? What? However, the next group, these are two of the biggies. Yes, sir?
So what's the gap? What happens in the gap between the Han and Sui dynasty? Is it another War in the States period?
Well, yeah, but not quite as long or as violent. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you're going to have the Shang, you're going to have the Han, you may have the Qin, you're probably going to get the Ming. The other big-time dynasty are these two, the Song and the Tang. Come on in. And the Tang will last about 300 years, from 618 to 907, and the Song is going to follow right on their heels from 960 to 1279. Important thing to keep in mind at this point in time, the Tang and the Song dynasty are going to be mirror images of, or not mirror images, they will happen simultaneously with a lot of events in the world. The Tang dynasty is in power right in the heart of the European Middle Ages. This is feudalism. This is Charlemagne. This is power of the church. This is the Treaty of Verdun. That is the Tang dynasty. Along with the Tang dynasty, we have the birth and the spread of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad is branching out during the Tang dynasty. And near the end, we get the West African trading empires in West Africa, Ghana, Songhai, and Mali. And way over, we're not even sure if it's there yet because the world is flat, we have Maya and Melega. We have the Mayans taking part in the Americas. So when you're looking at parallels through time, the Tang and the Song mirror a lot of stuff. The Crusades, the Byzantine Empire, all that happy stuff we'll go over later. Is this helping you guys kind of line stuff up? Like, oh, yes. All right. I have your DBQ for you, by the way. So, all right. Now the Tang, they're expansionists. Those little Sui suckers, they didn't know what was going on. We're the Tang and Dang. We are going to go kick some butt and take names. And they expand China's borders. They add in Manchuria, Mongolia, Tibet, and Korea. And they greatly expand their empire. But it gets so big, we have that proximity to authority thing. The balloon, kind of like Rome, expands so big, we don't know how to control the whole thing. The one positive, or one of the positives, we'll get some more down here, is that the agriculture resurges as when the warring states and Sui are done, the Tang are strong enough to unify all of China again. When the agricultural reaches a surplus, what does the Chinese population do? It increases. It moves farther ahead. And so they will achieve the highest population on the planet at this time. But warlords begin to gain power out on the fringes. Emmy over there, Alex over there, Greta and Bryn over here, because they're so far away from the emperor, he can't get to everywhere at one time. So after like 3, short but powerful 100 years, the Tang Dynasty collapses and the Shang Dynasty takes over. And the song is like a perfect name for it. It's like a sweet song, a sweet melody. Or, actually I had a student named Melody Song. If you hear that melody, we're talking about you. But it's like the Enya I play for you guys during tests. You get this big, powerful, booming stuff. It's hard to control. And every now and then, you want something soft and nice, like a warm, freshly baked chocolate chip cookie. Or, in Chapel Hill, warm, freshly baked kale chip. Where it's just a little chewy, but it's also soft at the same time. And the song says sometimes bigger is not better. Sometimes smaller and more manageable is the way to go. You simply can't do everything. So organize and take your time. And the song are just that way. They're organized, and while they don't follow the tradition of expanding the territory is much smaller than the Tang, it's much more, it's ran just a whole lot better. They reunified China, and because of their policies at trimming away the fat and dealing with a smaller area, it is a massive era of economic resurgence and prosperity in China. It is a very good time. Even merchants, for the first time, are smiled upon, because Mia is no longer sitting just in Mia Mart. She is actually traveling throughout China, and she is selling goods and services everywhere. Well done, Mia. I do like a good Mia Mart. I'm just going to tell you. Right. And because of the peace and the prosperity and the vitality of both the Tang and the Song, this is one of the golden ages of China. And that China, and we're going to end up in 1279, which is right on the edge of the Renaissance. So the Song will be in power during the Crusades, during the High Middle Ages, the Emperor versus Pope conflict. And the Crusades bring what back to Europe for the first time in 600 years? Actual learning, education, all right? Along with a lot of stuff, all right? A lot of knowledge. Well, the High Middle Ages end in what period? 1300, which is this great period called the blank festival. The Renaissance. All right, the Renaissance. So think of the Song Dynasty as Renaissance people. And a good Renaissance person, jack of all trades, they are good at everything. They can sing, they can dance, they can play an instrument, they can recite poetry, they can actually read and write, and sometimes do complex mathematics. These people are good, all right? They can do a little bit of everything. Well, that's the Tang and the Song. They begin the deep Chinese affiliation with landscape painting, showing their deep connection to nature. They write poetry. And one of the biggest, most important inventions in world history, they get wooden block printing, movable type that you can put down and rub a roller across it, and you can mass produce written documents. The more documents there are for people to read, this increases the amount of people who can read. All right, there we go. They were stable partially because this is where the Confucian civil service exam becomes an institution. This is when they begin to use that, we're going to send you out to the small village and see how you do there. Then you can move up to the mid-sized town. And if you're really, really, really good, you can take the metropolitan exam test. And when you come out of that test, you're like an AP World History student about noon on May the 12th. Unless your Abigail was like, whatever, I'll done like 12 of these. All right, so, all right. Also, to make Myanmar easier to use, Chinese begin to use paper currency and extensions of credit. These are ideas they picked up from the Islamic merchants coming over along the Silk Road. Christina can't carry a bag of gold all the way over to Lara. So she deposits it in Olivia's bank, who says, yes, Christina has $1,000 in the bank here. She goes over to Laraville and she withdraws her $1,000. It's a safer way to use money. Credit and paper currency in the local areas. As a result, communication lines and transportation routes get longer. It is at this point that the Silk Road will attach itself all the way through the Middle East. It is going into Africa and actually going back into Europe. It was there during ancient Rome, and it lost a little bit of that during the Crusades. It is during this period that famous merchant Marco Polo was supposedly to have made it over there. Once again, he did not make it. It's like that stupid game. There were regional trade routes. Nobody went from Europe to China. They met at 3 or 4, everybody went about a fourth or a third of the way. Negative process of the Shang Dynasty. This is when they begin the process of foot binding, taking a young upper class young lady's foot and bending the toes downward until they broke because they thought this looked like a nice flower petal, completely hampering the lady's ability to move around. But if you were a poor peasant lady, you weren't foot bound because your butt was out in the field with your husband and your kids growing stuff. Because what are humans until 1750? What's our biggest economy? We are growing agriculture. We're growing stuff. Why, Robert?
We like to eat.
How many sandwiches did you eat today?
1.
Where are the other 6?
At home.
No wonder you look so tired. You're only eating a sandwich. You tanks on E, brother. All right, we can't have that. So, the Song will fall because these people are back. My God, why do they keep coming back? I'm sick of them. It's the Yuan Dynasty or the Mongols. And we're going to talk a lot more about the Mongols when we talk about trading because they are one of the biggest, would it be an impetus? They're one of the biggest variables, the biggest movers and shakers of trade, in world history. Ooh, shake it off. All right, shake it off, shake it off. You guys can make fun of Taylor, but what is she that I'm not? Oh, A, blonde, B, female, and C, really rich. So anyway, it's all right. I like some Taylor Swift. All right. Now, Mongols come in. Remember, Mongols are barbarians. This is the time where they conquer all the way up into Russia with the Golden Horde. They come down to the Crimea Peninsula, and they start the Black Death. And the cousins get into a fight down in the Middle East over Islam. So the Mongol Empire is massive. And they're warriors, right? Genghis Khan, when do you show peace and when do you show mercy? So when they finally conquer mainland China, China proper,